The night it began, I was 8 years old, and already knew the sound of our house too well. The hum of the fridge, the groan of the pipes, the sigh of wind against the siding. That's why I noticed when something new slipped in, soft and steady, like someone breathing where no one should be. It came from the corner of my room, the darkest corner where the wallpaper peeled a little and the shadows stayed longer than they should. I thought maybe it was the vent or the tree outside brushing the glass. But then I saw it, two pale hands gripping the window frame from the outside, fingers pressed flat against the glass like they'd been waiting there for hours. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. The face that leaned forward wasn't a stranger's, and it wasn't familiar either. It looked worn, stretched thin, like paper left in the rain, and the eyes didn't blink. They just stayed fixed on me, as though I'd done something wrong I couldn't remember. When I blinked, the window was empty, but the condensation on the glass had shifted. 3 long streaks running down, as if fingers had dragged through the fog. I pulled the blanket up, my chest heaving, and whispered to myself that it wasn't real. The next morning, my mom asked why I hadn't slept. I almost told her, but then I saw the same streaks still etched into the glass, shining faintly in the daylight. She scrubbed at them with a cloth, but they wouldn't come off. That night, I heard the breathing again. I tried to stay awake as long as I could, staring at the ceiling, tracing the glow-in-the-dark stars I had stuck there myself. The house was quiet, too quiet, like even the air was waiting. My eyelids grew heavy, but the sound came again, slow, heavy breathing from the corner. This time I didn't look at the window. I couldn't. Instead, I focused on the door, ready to run, but the air grew colder, my skin prickled, and I felt the weight of something in the room with me. The mattress dipped, just slightly, as if someone had leaned their hand against it. My chest froze. I knew I was alone. I had to be. Then a whisper slid right against my ear, not from across the room, right there, inches from my skin. I couldn't make out the words, but they carried the dryness of dead leaves, the rasp of something old and patient. I pulled the blanket over my head, shaking so hard the bed creaked beneath me. I don't remember falling asleep. When I woke, my blanket was gone. It wasn't on the bed, or the floor, or anywhere in the room. My mother found it hours later, stuffed into the back of the closet, wedged so tightly into the corner it looked like it had been shoved there by force. She scolded me for making a mess, but I knew better. I hadn't left my bed. The next night I locked my door. I thought that would keep it out. But around midnight the knob rattled, slow and deliberate, as though someone was testing the lock, turning it just enough to hear the click of metal. Then came 3 knocks, gentle, careful, almost polite. I didn't open it. When morning came, the door was standing wide open. I begged my mum to believe me. I told her about the door, about the breathing, about the hands on the window. She smiled tightly and said, "You just have bad dreams." But I could see it in her eyes. Something flickered there, like she wasn't as sure as she wanted me to think. That night I stayed up with a flashlight. I kept it under my pillow, the way some kids keep toys or candy. Midnight came, and with it, the sound, breathing, long, steady breaths, like whoever it was had all the time in the world. I gripped the flashlight and snapped it on. The beam cut across the room, shaky in my trembling hands. For a moment, nothing, just the peeling wallpaper and my dresser. Then I moved the light toward the window. Someone was inside. A tall figure stood by the glass, facing the yard, as if it had just climbed in. Its back was to me, but it was wrong, too tall, its head brushing the ceiling, its arms hanging long at its sides. I couldn't breathe. My finger slipped, and the flashlight dropped. The beam swung wild, hit the ceiling, the floor, the wall. When it found the corner again, the figure was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I convinced myself maybe it hadn't been real, maybe I had imagined the shape. But when I went to the window, I saw them again. Those same streaks across the glass, only this time they weren't on the inside. They dragged down the outside too, like someone had been standing both in and out at once. Days passed. I stopped eating. My mum told me I looked pale, but what could I say? That something was living in our house, waiting in the dark for me to close my eyes. She would never believe it. One night, my little sister came running into my room. She was crying, shaking so hard she could barely speak. "He was in my closet," she whispered. "He was whispering my name." That's when I realized it wasn't just me. The first night my sister told us she'd seen him, the house felt thinner, like a curtain had been pulled back, and everything private was suddenly exposed. My mother searched the closets and muttered prayers under her breath. My stepfather tried to joke it away, but he started leaving the hallway light on, like a small concession to things he refused. We began to notice patterns. The tapping came on rainy nights more than dry ones, a slow, deliberate rhythm that sounded almost patient. The scratches on the floor were never random. They traced straight lines toward the window and stopped as if someone had been measuring distance. Toys would be arranged differently, an army of plastic figures standing in a tidy row where chaos had been the rule. Once, a stack of picture books sat open on the mattress, pages turned to a fold in the middle, as though someone had been reading in the dark. I tried to be brave. I told myself bravery was a thing you practiced until it felt normal. So I set out a camera once, the cheap kind my mum bought to record a birthday. I propped it on the dresser, aimed at the window, and left it running all night. I slept badly with the dim red light blinking like an eye. In the morning, the footage showed nothing but a slow fog forming across the glass, a smear that widened and thinned until the lens blurred, and then 3 sharp streaks where the window had been touched. There was no tall figure in the frame, no floating dress, no face, just the rain and the way the glass kept its secrets. After that, I stopped trying to prove it to machines. People who live with things like this learn the cruelty of evidence. Some truths are only meant to be felt. One afternoon, when the light was clear and then gone in quick swallowing waves, I found something tucked behind the baseboard of my closet. I was looking for a lost toy soldier, and my hand brushed something brittle and small. It was a folded piece of paper wrapped in a thin cloth, brittle with age. I carried it to the kitchen and unfolded it over the sink. The handwriting was cramped and patient. It read, in a looping script, a name and a date and a single short line. Please forgive me. The name had a child's nickname beneath it, a nickname my sister used to hum when she played with dolls. I kept that paper under my mattress for a week. I would take it out at night and stare until the letters blurred, feeling like I had stolen something private. But the more I held it, the more the house felt like a mouth opening a little wider, revealing one small, hidden truth at a time. The old woman at the corner store, Mrs. Lang, who had lived in that neighborhood since before I was born, saw me looking at the paper one day and drew me aside. She smelled of cigarettes and lemon oil and had a way of making you feel small and safe at the same time. When I asked her about the house, she didn't flinch. She told me things in pieces, like handing me puzzle parts with wise, careful fingers. There was a girl once, she said, voice low. A little thing. Didn't live long. Folks talked in whispers. The mother, she couldn't bear it. People say she waited. She tapped the paper in my hand. Sometimes waiting becomes a place a person lives in. It stays long after their body goes. Her words didn't explain the breath on my cheek or the way the pains fogged, as if someone were there with me, but they painted the edges of it in a softer color. The word waiting settled into the back of my mind like a seed. After that, I started to listen differently. The whispers that had once been an impossible language began to sound more like fragments of lullabies. The tapping turned into syllables I almost recognized, a cadence like a mother counting heartbeats. At the foot of my bed, I found a single small sock, faded and too tiny for any child who lived in our house now. It smelled like dust and old flowers. I couldn't throw it away. I tucked it into my jacket and pressed it to my face sometimes when the night felt too loud. One night, driven by a mix of anger and pity I didn't know I owned, I went back to the yard of the house across the street where the man in the hat used to stand. The porch light was off and the house seemed to hold its breath. I waited at the gate until the moon climbed and the yard gave itself to shadow. Then the window on the second floor glowed, a pale rectangle, and a hand slid across it, not from outside, but like a trace left by an answer. A voice, so soft I thought I was imagining it, said my name as if it had been waiting for me to come back. I called out her name the only way I felt safe calling anything that was not human, softly, with the solemnity of a child saying grace. Eleanor, I said, the syllables clumsy and small. The window parted a fraction, like a curtain stirred, and a face leaned out. She looked older than the papers, older than grief. Her mouth moved, and a single word reached me, as if pushed on a draft. Find? Find what? I pressed my palm to the gate and felt the ligature of night. The answer came later in pieces. An old photograph bound in a book at the library, a name on a headstone that had been sunk low under moss, a trunk of tiny clothes found and buried in silence. Each discovery felt like a riddle finished one by one. The ghost did not want to hurt us. She wanted her story closed. Still, closings have their own teeth. When you try to put a wrong right, sometimes what you do opens something else. I learned that the hard way the night I took the photograph of a small child to the cemetery and placed it on a stone whose name matched the one on the folded page. The air around me seemed to listen. The tapping that night came not from outside the window, but from within my chest. A rapid staccato of fear and hope. I said what I'd found aloud, as if proof could fill the hollow place. She's here, she's found. And the wind answered by dragging dead leaves into a swirl that looked almost like applause. After that, things changed shape. The visits didn't stop, but they shifted. Less urgent now. Less testing, more expectant. Sometimes, late, when I stood by a glass and watched the world wash by in rain, I would see a pale face out there smiling, as if someone had been taught to hope again. My sister slept more soundly for a while. My mother stopped waking at the slightest sound. The house exhaled and held it there, until the night in the hotel, years later, when I saw her on the other side of glass, in a place that had nothing to do with the little road from childhood. I thought then that perhaps she followed me, not because she was tied to wood and nails, but because once a person is seen, they have a way of being remembered. She pressed her forehead to the glass that night and mouthed something I could not hear, and the rain painted tracks on the pane between us. I wanted to press my palm to match hers, to close the distance, but the room felt full of witnesses and of polite boundaries. I left the light on and slept badly. Some nights I tell myself I did the right thing, repaired a seam in a story that had been left open. Other nights, when a sudden knock comes in the rain, slow and patient, I wonder if opening windows is what she wants, or if she wants someone to step outside with her. I have tried both, to leave things alone and to step closer. Both have left their marks. Now, sometimes when I stand by my window and the streetlights smear into orange, the rain tapping a soft metronome, I feel a something like readiness, not mine entirely. It hums under the skin, a patience learned from decades of waiting. The glass cools under my hand. The lock trembles as if from a hen's breath. Far off, a clock tolls the hour, and the house takes a breath of its own. I reach up because some part of me has always been curious, and because some part believes in finishing what was begun. My fingers find the old metal latch that remembers every push and pull it has ever known. The room tightens. Outside, the rain hushes, as if the world is holding itself to hear the sound of the click. And then, before I turn the handle, the tapping starts again on the other side of the glass. Not nails this time. A slow, patient knock 3 times. 3 small, deliberate touches. The exact rhythm of a lullaby counted in a language I almost, but not quite, understand. I don't move. My hand stalls above the latch, the metal cold, the air electric, and the house waits with me. The sound comes again, closer this time. So close I can feel the beat through the wood. A whisper drifts through the seam like steam, and it says one word that is neither promise nor threat, but something older and cleaner. That whisper clung to me, echoing in the small bones of the house. Soon, it was not a threat, not a comfort either. It was like a promise made in a language that didn't care whether I wanted it or not. The next morning, the house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The curtains sagged heavier, the air thick with something that made breathing taste like dust and old rain. My sister asked why I was so pale. I told her I didn't sleep. She laughed nervously and said she heard it too. The knocking, the lullaby. At school, I found myself staring at the windows. Every reflection seemed to carry something extra, some faint outline standing just behind me. I blinked and it was gone, but the feeling lingered, like static pressed against my skin. That night, the knocking didn't wait for midnight. It started before the sun had fully gone down. Tap, 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 measured, patient, the sound of someone who had all eternity to wait but preferred to remind me they were still there. I locked my door, shoved the dresser against it, as if that would matter. The sound followed anyway, crawling along the walls, circling the room, tapping from the ceiling. My flashlight flickered and died. The dark folded itself around me like a second skin, and then the voice came again, not outside, not in the hall, from inside the room, close enough that the air moved with it. Soon, I bolted upright. My sister's toy blocks were sliding across the floor, one by one, arranging themselves in crooked letters. My hands shook as I watched them spell it out. F-I-N-D-M-E. I couldn't breathe. The air pressed heavy, and the room tilted. The blocks clattered once more, and the message shifted. N-O-W. The closet door creaked open, though I hadn't touched it. Inside was nothing but black, too thick to be just shadow. A draft poured out cold as the inside of a grave. Something stepped forward, tall, too tall, arms brushing the frame, a shape that didn't fit the angles of the room, as though it bent the very space to make itself fit. Its face hovered in the dark, pale and blurred, the way a memory looks when it's almost forgotten. And it spoke again, louder this time, filling the closet, the room, my chest, the marrow of my bones. Soon, the walls trembled with it. The light bulb above me cracked, showering glass in tiny sparks. I stumbled back against the window, my breath fogging the glass, and through the blur of my own fear I saw it, outside, across the yard, in the house opposite ours. Another figure, a child, small, frail, watching from behind the curtain, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Two of them, one inside, one outside, both waiting. Well, the figure in the closet did not move closer, but the air between us pressed tighter, like a weight lowering slowly onto my chest. Its face flickered in and out of detail, never fully solid, never fully gone. Behind me, the glass chilled until my breath froze against it in tiny, shivering clouds. Across the street, the child's pale face remained fixed at the window. She didn't blink, didn't move, just watched. Her eyes glowed with a sheen of water, as though she had been crying for years and had forgotten how to stop. I whispered my sister's name, praying she was still asleep, praying she wouldn't wake and see this. My voice cracked under the pressure of the silence that followed. The figure inside tilted its head, a slow, unnatural motion, like a puppet tugged by threads. I thought about running, about tearing open the door and sprinting down the hall, down the stairs, out into the cold night. But the dresser pressed heavy against the door, and in my gut I knew that whatever had come out of the closet would not be left behind. Then I heard it again, the tapping, but not from the walls this time, from the floorboards beneath me. Tap, 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 like something crawling under the house, finding its way to me from every direction. The figure stepped back into the closet, but the blackness it carried did not leave with it. The darkness stretched outward, climbing the walls like smoke, swallowing the corners of the room. The message, spelled in blocks, lay scattered now, but their letters burned into my mind. Find me. I couldn't stop myself. My legs moved without my permission, carrying me toward the closet. My hand shook as I reached for the frame. The air pouring out of it was colder than winter, colder than the inside of a grave, and it whispered with voices too many to count. Some cried, some begged, some sang. All of them pressed into my ears until I thought I'd drown in their sound. Inside, for just a moment, I saw something small, a ribbon, pale pink, tied around a tiny bundle of cloth. It lay on the floor of the closet as though it had been waiting centuries for someone to notice. My stomach twisted, my breath left me. I knelt, reaching with trembling fingers. The moment I touched it, the voices cut out. The air collapsed into silence so deep it roared. Across the street, the child at the window lowered her hand, pressed her forehead to the glass, and disappeared into shadow. Behind me, the closet door slammed shut, nearly catching my arm. The ribbon burned hot in my hand, and when I opened my fist, it was gone. But the word remained in my ears, louder than ever, spoken from the cracks in the floor and the trembling glass of the window. Soon. For days after the ribbon vanished, the house refused to breathe the same way. Every room felt slightly off, like furniture had been moved back a fraction of an inch, like the walls no longer lined up with the floor. My sister complained of cold dreams of standing at windows that weren't hers, looking out into streets she'd never seen. I tried to tell myself it was almost over, that whatever lived with us had gotten what it wanted, but deep down, I knew better. The word wouldn't stop. Soon, it hung in my ears when I brushed my teeth, when I walked to school, when I lay down at night. Sometimes I thought I heard it in other people's mouths, tucked between their sentences, like a seed planted in every sound. The rain came harder one night, beating the glass until it blurred into silver. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling when I heard the lock on my window tremble. Just once, then again, a soft rattle, like a hand testing it. My body froze. I wanted to scream for my mother, but the sound stuck in my throat. The lock rattled again, and this time it clicked, not open, not shut, just moved enough to say, I can. The tapping followed, not from outside, from behind the glass, inside the room. Slow, patient, a rhythm I now knew by heart. I sat up, every nerve screaming at me to run, but I couldn't, because I saw her, the girl, the one from the window. She was in my room now, pale as moonlight, her dress heavy with shadows, her small hands reaching toward me. Her mouth opened. The sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a lullaby, low and broken, the kind a mother hums to a child who never grows old. The words didn't make sense, but the tune wrapped around me like chains. Behind her, the taller figure emerged, bending under the ceiling, its arms dragging long. It stood in silence, its head tilted, watching, waiting, the girl's eyes locked on mine. She whispered again, the same word she had always given me, only now it sounded different, full, finished. Now! The window burst wide, the curtains snapping like sails, the rain rushing in. My flashlight rolled from the bed and flickered once before dying. In that last spark of light, I saw them both, her small hand closing around mine, his tall shadow covering the walls. And then the house went dark.